Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Poet Speaks podcast. Our next guest is a poet from South Africa, coming from the small town of eShowe in KwaZulu-Natal. She found her voice through poetry and started the Turning Pain into Power movement, or journey, as she called it. Her poems speak of what it's like being a colored, mixed race woman in South Africa, as well as other topics that take you on a journey of consciousness and thought. She's also co-founder of hashtag I Am Poetry Africa, a foundation that guides poets on how to master their craft and to find healing through poetry. She has recently published her first book with Read or Green Books, Do I Look African Enough? The book touches on her story and many others as well, revealing harsh truths past and present. Please welcome to the Poet Speaks podcast, Kimberly M Anderson, or KMA. Kimberly, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. I'm great. I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good, pretty good. I'm curious for your artist name, you go by KMA.
Yes. It's not so complicated. I mean, everyone always asked me what was the M for. It basically is my initials. Kimberly M Anderson. I never ever wanted to say what my second name was, but I
Yeah.
loved my initials.
Yeah.
And especially also growing up in South Africa, we always had nicknames. I'm not sure how it is on that side, but you have to have a nickname in your community. If you don't have a nickname, you kind of don't have an identity. So out of all the nicknames that I had, which was Kimbo, Kimbo Slice, Kimba, Kimmy, I hated every single one of them.
Yeah.
And I was like, what am I going to call myself now as a poet? I can have a pen name. And I'm like, KMA. And a friend of mine only figured it out this year what the M stood for when I had to produce my ID for something.
Well,
The M stands for Mabel. I'm not proud, but it stands for Mabel.
okay, that's what it stands for, but we call you the pen name, KMA. So tell us a little bit, where are you currently located in the world right now? Where are we talking to you out of from?
Right now, I'm in Johannesburg. The very hot, the very sunny, even though it's spring, but it feels like it's summer. I'm out in Johannesburg, the city that never sleeps, the city that's
Mm.
always busy, the city that produces so many craftsmen and artists. And this is a crazy city, but I found myself in the city about 5 years ago, and I'm not so sure if I want to leave yet.
Yeah. Where did you so you found yourself in the city 5 years ago. You weren't born and raised in Johannesburg. Where were you born and raised? I'm sure I butchered the city name and the title. So tell us, where were you born and raised then in South Africa?
I forgive you. I know even people in South Africa butcher that name. I'm from a small town called eShowe, but I wasn't born in eShowe. My mom was born in eShowe, but I was born in Durban. And
Mm-hmm.
when I was about 5 or 3, my mom decided she's moving back to Eshowe, which was her hometown, my grandmother's hometown, my great parents' hometown. And we actually went to go and live in my great grandparents' home that they had built in Eshowe, which was their homestead. And that's where I spent my whole life from the age of about 5, 3, 5, up to now.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
like even though I moved when I got to 19, because Eshowe is a very small place. It's a farming town. It's known for sugarcane farms and vegetation and all these amazing things. But it was a town where I thought I could not see people progress further than a certain limit. So I was like, nah, everyone, when it comes to a person's success or when it came to a person's growth, they always had to leave Eshowe. Like we had there's this amazing soccer player. His name is Derek Spencer. He left Eshowe and he became one of the best soccer players. And he became an icon in our little town, and he became such a big icon that he started a tournament in our small hometown. So I was like, ooh, I want to be like that. Not like that, but I want to be that person that leaves and
Yeah.
becomes something greater than the stigma of being part of a family that was known for um a single parent household and coming from one generation to the next, from, you know, so many things that I felt like I needed to break the cycle of. And I was like, nah, I'm moving. But it was a hard decision to make because eShowe was everything that I knew. KwaZulu-Natal was everything that I knew. I didn't move out of my province. It had to take me 20 something years so I could get out of my province, which was scary, but it was the best decision I could have made for myself.
It seems like that seems to be the story. So many people having to leave their hometown. Everyone, why do you think that is that everyone feels like they have to leave their hometown to really make something of themselves? Well, the pattern is I find people always go back to their hometown though. Why do you think people always feel like they need to have to leave their hometown to go be something? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's I was reading a story the other day, and they were talking about the same thing. And I feel like for my hometown, because it's so small, this everyone knows everyone. When I stepped back into my hometown, I was there not about over a year ago. And I stepped into town, the center of town. Now we don't have no we never had escalators in our little hometown. We only had an escalator like now in our little mall. We had our town itself had one street. So I could count how many stores I could buy at. Like I could count the Pick and Pay grocery store. I could count and tell you how many pharmacies I had on that street, which at that time was about 3. And then I was like, oh, now there's new stuff. You know, when I went home, I was like, wow, we have an escalator. A friend of mine that was here in Johannesburg, because he's a lawyer and he came out to Pretoria, and he was working out in Pretoria, and we were traveling home. It was about 2 years ago. And I was like, dude, I heard there's escalators at the mall. Imagine we so big. We parents, we wives and husbands to people, and we like, dude, we're getting excited for our little hometown. He's like, you lie. And he's like, for real? I was like, I bet you about $50 that there are escalators at the mall. And that's how small my hometown is.
Yeah, yeah.
And the sense of being in a town where everybody knows you and everybody knows your business, everybody knows your family, everybody knows how you grew up, whether it was in poverty, whether it was in success, you know, who you dated, who you didn't date. 9 times out of 10, everybody ended up dating the same person. You know, that's just how my little town is. And the level of gossip in a little town can either make or break you as a person. And I feel like the reason for some of us leaving and achieving that little success, or getting to achieve a little bit of where we want to be, is the sense of getting away from everything that we thought we knew, away from the talks of you can't, away from the limitation and that bar of limitation that's set above your head that says, hey, your family is poor, you can't afford to even think like me. You can't even afford to think of publishing a book. Who are you? How dare you ever try and think you can do such a thing? And that's for me personally, because I could have never. Honestly, to be truthful, I could have never. I never had the finances. I never had the oomph or the drive. I was just a writer. Even though I was in my little hometown, I wrote here and there, but I never took it serious. I never took myself serious. You know, I know so many other amazing artists that come from my hometown that could be amazing, but because they're also set to that bar of limitation, they will never achieve that greatness because that's just here. You know, with a small little hometown with a little population of a very little limited people, where you just leave to go and live in a city like Durban, which is about an hour away, and you could live your best life and achieve so much, meet other artists, learn other things. Because eShowe is a farm town, but it's also an old age town as well. There's a lot of old people. You know, there's not a lot of young people, and all the young people that are there are mixed up in drugs, mixed up in alcohol. There's no recreational projects that are keeping the youth alive. There is nothing that the community is trying to do that's keeping the youth alive. And those that are trying, I commend them. And then you have our government system that's like, no, you can't do this. And no, you can't do that. It's only a no, you can't do this, and you can't do that because I didn't think about it first type of mentality. So there's so much when it comes to that little town. Because even I said to my husband when we moved, and we always said one day we'd love to go back, because it's a peaceful place. I like the silence. I like the quiet of that space. Even though Johannesburg, when I moved here, everything was so busy. Everything was just like the taxi system. I didn't know so many things. I didn't know you needed to use special hand signs, like pick your finger up and put your finger down and make a 7. I didn't know that. So when I moved here, I was so confused. I'd lived in Durban, and I knew Durban, everything was verbalized. I enjoyed the city of Durban when I lived there for over a year. But when I moved to Johannesburg, it was totally different. And a friend of mine laughed at me. I was like, this farm girl is saying, sorry, excuse me, sorry. And I'm letting everybody walk past me. I'm thinking people are going to be friendly and give me directions. It's not like that. It wasn't like that, because I'm coming from a small hometown where if I stopped and I asked somebody for directions, I would give them or I would get them. Even up to now, if you had to call me and say, hey, I'm on Lewis Street, I need to get to Finn Road, I'll be like, hey, you take a left here, you take because of how familiar I am with my little town. But
I'm curious for you, when did writing enter into your mindset? When did you start beginning your poetry journey that was in your small town, or when you moved to the bigger town?
It was in my small town. I remember when I was very, very young, and I'd forgotten about it. And I'd remembered it about 2 years ago. When I was very young, we used to go and visit one of my uncles, and he stayed far out, not too far out, but quite far out. And I said to him once that I think I was about 12, 13, and I said, you know what? I always like hear these words. I have these words that are organized in my head, and I don't know where to put them or how, or where do they even come from. And he's like, write them down. And I'm like, okay. And I didn't take it serious because I didn't take myself serious. I was still that kid that ran around without shoes and tomboy with scars all over my legs. I wasn't interested in all of that. And nobody in my family really knew, we didn't really know about that. And when I got to high school, a friend of mine, Tennille Minis, her and I would write letters to each other. And she would write me a letter when she was at home because she was going through some things. And I would write a letter from the classroom because I was like, I don't want to write letters at home. My mom is going to like look through the letters and stuff like that. So she used to write me a long letter and I used to reply in the classroom. And eventually she was like, no, 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 no. I don't want to write the letters anymore. You write the letters better than me. So I was like, oh, okay. So that's when the writing started, or that little love for writing started. And then it started progressing when I met my first real love. And I wrote an entire book for this guy. And from start to end, it was a 72-page book. It was about this big. I don't know. Now you can't see it. Yeah, there you go. It was about that big, and it was about that thick. And from start to end, I had written poems and poems and poems about him. And I gave him that book. And that was the first time I ever wrote poetry. And then I got mad when I broke up with him. And I was like, this guy had me writing poetry. And it was beautiful poetry. Up to like now, I wish I could find that book. Because like, can I have my stuff back? But at that time, it was just a thing of I was still finding my identity as a person. There was a lot of things that I dabbled with at that age where I was like, okay, am I going to be good at writing? Am I going to be good at poetry? A friend of mine's like, join the poetry club. And I'm like, what are my friends going to say? Because I'm part of the popular crew. So what are they going to say when I go for poetry sessions in one of the classrooms during our break time? Or, I'm not going to go and stand in the corridor and have a smoke with them, or, do all these other crazy things that we did in high school. And even playing chess. Chess was something that I enjoyed in high school, but I hid that I even played chess. And eventually, when I moved, before I moved to Johannesburg in 2016, 2017, I started writing, but it was like just writing in my classroom because as a teacher, the only time I would get a chance would be before my class would come in the morning. So I would quickly jot something down on a scrap piece of paper or on the tuck shop book at the back. And I found myself doing it more and more and more and more. Because there was a lot of things happening in my adult life that started triggering things that happened when I was a kid. And I had suppressed them to a certain extent, to a point where that jar was too full for me to close anymore. And it started to let up and let up and let up. And eventually the lid popped off in 2017, and I was writing nonstop, but I was just writing for me. And I was writing on everything I could get my hands on, just to release how I was feeling, whether I was happy for that day, whether I was sad for that day. And then in 2018, and notes during 2017, 2016, I had my first anxiety attack. 2017, I started progressing. And in 2018, I finally came to the understanding that I had depression. And still not really understanding what depression was, not understanding that the anxiety attacks followed that. And poetry became my lifeline during that whole time, because I would be having an anxiety attack around about this time. It's 12 a.m., 1 a.m. These are my hours, or used to be my hours. And I'll be having an anxiety attack, but I'm still writing. Tears are streaming down. I can hardly breathe, but I'm writing. And the more I'm writing, the more I release how I felt. I even went on to started writing about, instead of just writing your love poems, your happy poems, your sunshine and rainbows poems, I started writing about my anxiety. The first real piece I feel I wrote during that time was a piece called Suffocating, where I describe from start to end what my anxiety attacks feel like in metaphors, and how I felt internally and emotionally. And coming from a very strict Pentecostal household, in that piece, I was like scared to even post that piece. Because even when I started writing, I wasn't really posting. I was sending it to other pages on Facebook and stuff to post. And they would post and they'd be like, why don't you just start your own page? I'm like, what do I even name my page? And that's when Turning Pain into Power was birthed. I was like, okay, it's going to be Turning Pain into Power, because that's what I'm doing. I'm turning my pain into power. And when I released that piece, there were some that were like, oh, you can't release that piece. That piece, you're talking about demons are picking at you, and you feel like you're in this cage and the darkness around you. Like, you can't be posting such things. And I posted it anyway. And the response was amazing, because I had people that were ex-drug addicts that came up and were like, hey, I know what this feels like. I had people that had tried to commit suicide that were like, I know what this feels like. So the more I wrote and the more I released how I felt, the better I felt. And the less I cared, because I was that person that cared, because coming from that small town, you care what everyone says about you. You care about what other people's opinions are about you. So when I started writing full force and KMA was birthed, she didn't care what people thought about her. She wrote about it. She wrote about her anger. She wrote about her joy. She wrote about the best moments of her life and the worst moments of her life. And even the rejection that she had to face from a mom or her dad, or even about forgiveness. I got to figure out there was no limitation when it came to my pen. But as Kimberly Anderson, I always was limited. I think very carefully about what I say before I say it. That's the type of person I am. But KMA, she has no filter. She says what she has to say, whenever she has to say it, however she has to say it. Uh, and that's what I respect. And I think I love about that part of who I am.
For sure. It's like that alter ego. I think a lot of people can relate to that when they write. They almost do create that alter ego to be able to really, like you said, she's not scared, KMA. She's not scared. She's fearless, all those things. So I think a lot of people can relate to that. So I want to move on. Mixed race in South Africa. That's a really kind of a theme of, well, your new poetry collection, your new book, your first book out. Tell us, what does that mean? What does that mean in your life? And then what does that mean today being mixed race in South Africa today?
Eh, it's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
it, it's interesting in the sense of another friend of mine. We had an interview about a year ago, and um, he's first generation mixed race. Clear Ripka, amazing poet. He's first generation mixed race, and he's meaning his mom is black and his dad is white. And there comes Kim, that's not first, not second, not even third. You know, if I really have to count, and looking at the lineage as well, it's Xhosa on my dad's side when you look down the line, and then on my mom's side it's white, the white side is German, and then it's Zulu on my mom's side. And I'm like, okay, this is just a whole mixture. This is, but the amazing part of it was not being what society thought I was, because I've had so many people look at me and come up to me and speak Afrikaans when it's something that I don't speak. It's not a language, and that's apparently what makes me colored, or what makes me mixed race. And a good friend of mine out in Bloemfontein, always teases me and he says, "I don't know who you are or what you are. Your people need to take you back." And
Wow. Okay.
I always laugh at it. He always teases me about it because he's your complexion, and he's very fluent in Afrikaans. And then you get Kim, that people assume she can speak Afrikaans, but I can't. For the life of me, I can't. I can understand it to a certain extent. And apparently that's what made me not colored enough. The fact that I didn't drink to a certain amount made me not colored enough. The fact that I don't swear or use certain profanity meant I'm not colored enough. Or they would question my color because of certain things like that I ate or that I didn't eat, or just small little things. And I was like, oh, is that what makes me a colored? And it was crazy because I was like, a few years ago I was watching a television program and they were asking them, what does it mean to be black? And I was like, what does it mean to be black? And I got to figure out that I'm not black enough and I'm not white enough. As a colored person, I'm just somewhere in the middle. And it was a sad thing when I got to realize when I moved out of my little town, because in my little town, I was accepted in the township. I didn't really move in the white neighborhoods. I never really had white friends. But I moved a lot in the townships with my black friends, because majority of the people in my class were black. And we'd move in the township, we'd laugh, we'd go to parties. I'd be accepted, wholeheartedly accepted, until I dated a black guy. And my people were like, no, 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 we don't want him. I'm like, but we are part black. What's the difference? No, 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 we don't want him. And then I realized that there are mixed race people that are racist. And I went to, and I heard that statement once where people said, black people can't be racist, mixed race people can't be racist. That's a lie. That's a lie, because we have racism within ourselves. When I went out with this guy and his people pulled him aside and we said, we will pay you to leave this girl because we don't want her for you because she's mixed race. I could have spoken because I speak Zulu as my second language, it didn't care. They didn't care. It didn't matter to them. The fact that I ate pap and all these traditional Zulu foods and I could prepare them, and I knew how to respect a Zulu man. I knew how to bow. I knew how to cover my head. I knew how to do all these things, but it wasn't good enough just because of the color of my skin. And I was like, wow. So there are Black people that can be racist too. Or are they scared that something's going to happen to him because he's dating someone that's fair? And it didn't bother us. But eventually we did end up breaking up. And we spoke about it a couple of years ago. He's like, remember that time? Because we're good friends now. And he's like, remember that time? And I was like, yeah. He's like, your people almost killed me. And I was like, yeah, they almost killed you. So that was one of the challenges that I faced in my small hometown. But I didn't see too much of it after that. Because I was like, okay, I got to just stay dating in my race, in my pool. Because I was like, okay, that's the thing. I can't date out of my racial pool. Why? So the next question was why? And now everyone is dating everyone. When I was growing up, it wasn't so. And that stuck with me. And then when I moved out to Johannesburg, it became more evident that there was a racial stigma, or the stigma behind being colored in the workplace, that was associated with lawlessness or violence and so on and so forth. Because I went into my first workspace and they had assumed I was from a all-colored neighborhood. And I was like, no, I'm not even from here. And the girl that I worked with, she's like, you're not from here? I'm like, no. She's like, where you from? I was like, I'm from KwaZulu-Natal. I'm from eShowe. And she's like, oh, even the way you say that, you don't even say that like eShowe with the accent. I was like, how? How am I supposed to say it? I'm a farm girl. I come from eShowe. How can I not say the name correctly? And they were shocked. They're like, oh, we thought you like one of those colored people, like, yeah, I'm going to stab you, beer bottle drinking. And I'm like, no. And the more it happened, I was like, nah, this needs to be written about.
Yeah.
It's not going to slide. And the first piece I wrote about my experiences was A Colored Girl's Tale. And writing about yourself as a writer, as a poet, writing about yourself is not the easiest thing. I wrote about myself. I wrote about how I'm not your typical colored chick, and how even my kids, because one of my kids is my complexion and my other kid is darker in complexion, and how people looked at us very strangely in the store when my youngest was a baby, because she had ginger hair and she looked like a white baby, and this white lady looked very shocked. She stood in the aisle and she looked at me. She looked at my husband because he looks more Indian, and she looks at me. She looks at my husband, and I didn't notice until my aunt, she's from the apartheid generation. They notice these things. They notice these things. So she taps me and she's like, Kim. And I notice and I'm like, oh, okay. And it didn't bother me. It's like, she can keep guessing. And I wrote about those experiences because it was like a buildup. I was just mad. And I wrote about it in this piece. And I wrote about how people assume I speak Afrikaans, but I speak Zulu. And how I'm proud, even though I might not fully know how many dilutions on each side there is. I keep learning and I keep learning and I keep learning. And I was like, I don't care. I'm a mixed breed. I'm a mixed race. You can call me whatever you want to call me, but I know who I am. So it doesn't really matter what you call me, but I know who I am. And that piece actually birthed my identity as a writer, as a mixed race writer. Because when I came down to it, there were some people that even said, why do you have to explain yourself? You don't have to explain yourself to these people. And I'm like, nah, I'm not explaining myself. I'm re-educating some people that were misinformed about who we are as a people.
For
We are
sure.
not all gang members. We are not all lawless. We are not all associated with alcoholism and drug addiction and so on and so forth, like the apartheid system painted colored people to be, and painted Black people to be, and painted Indian people to be. Some people are still stuck with that mentality of that type of way of what colored people are like, or Black people are like, or Indian people are like. So when I started writing, I was like, I'm going to change the narrative. going to start writing about these things, everything. And it just started birthing more and more and more.
For sure. And yeah, that kind of goes into, so your debut book is your first book. It's called Do I Look African Enough? Yes, as she holds it up on the screen. Tell us a little bit about Do I Look African Enough? How did that kind of birth come? How did that kind of birth? How did that come to light? Obviously, you talk so much right now about your experience being mixed race and the trials and tribulations. How did this book kind of come to light then? Do I Look African Enough? Tell us a little bit more about that title, and how is this project finally came to life for your very first poetry collection?
Firstly, this was, like I say, uh this book was not supposed to happen if I had looked at it through my eyes. But through God's grace and faith, it happened, because I couldn't see myself publishing. As I said, as with everybody else in 2020, we had lost our jobs. The school I was working for closed down. But before that, in 2018, when I was really coming into it and, working on my delivery and more writing and so on and so forth, 2018, 2019, everyone was like, oh, you should have a book. And I'm like, not everyone that writes should just decide they want to have a book. What makes me good enough? And I was still at that phase. And I was like, okay, let me try this thing out. In 2020, I submitted for a competition. Not a competition, it was kind of a competition-ish. But I submitted a part of my manuscript, which I didn't even know how to put a manuscript together at that time. I didn't even know how to put my bio together properly at that time. And I didn't know there was a long and a short bio. I didn't know about all of that. And I'm still learning up to now. And so I was accepted by a publishing company in Europe. I'm not going to mention their name because I don't want to put them out there like that. But I was accepted by a publishing company in Europe, and it was amazing. I was excited. I had my friend, which is a lawyer, small look over the documents, and he was like, this looks legit. And everybody else, like my uncle and two other people, because I didn't tell too many people. I was like, can you guys just look over the stuff? And they were like, yeah, this looks legit. Because I'm like, okay, I look over it from my side and it looks decent. And I questioned this lady more about some things, and she said to me, yeah, these are the publishing, this is where your book will be promoted, in which countries. And she mentioned the countries, Australia and different places in Europe. And I was like, wow, that sounds exciting. And I was like, but I don't see Africa on your list. I don't even see not one African country on your list. And she's like, yeah, we're not working with companies out there. I was like, then I'm sorry, I can't accept your offer. And to somebody else, that could have been like, oh, that was your big break. Like, why didn't you just do it? And I was like, I couldn't do it. And the opportunity came up again at the end of 2020, and the offer was even better. She came with an even better offer. She's like, we've just signed with more companies, some in the US, and mentioned new countries. And I was like, I don't see any countries in Africa. I was like, even if it's Congo, Nigeria, any one of the African countries, give me Egypt, give me something. No, there's not one. And I was like, I can't. I'm sorry. And my family was like, okay. And I love my family because they were very supportive. They were very supportive, and they were like, whatever you decide, whatever you decide you want to do, we're behind you. They didn't criticize me or say, hey, why didn't you? But I was doing that to myself, because that's what I do to myself. I was like, Kim, but why? You could have just done it. And I just continued, I just continued working more on my craft. And as I started working more on my craft and more on my craft, I started learning that I love history more, because I did love history when I was in high school. But then it's like, along the way of being a mom, being a wife, we forget about the things that we enjoy. To be honest, there's a lot of things that we enjoy, and then we lose them along the way. And through poetry, I started finding those things that I enjoyed again. I enjoyed history, African history, different kinds of history, learning about different people's stories. And then I became obsessive in a way about it, because I said, ooh, if I'm learning about a certain person, I want to know everything about that person. So I'd start looking for old documents. I'd be starting to look for old documentaries, everything related to that specific person or that specific topic, write my notes down. I'd spend a couple of weeks just looking over it, soaking it in. And then after that, a couple of weeks would go by, and then I'd write about it. And from being a poet that just wrote one go in one day to writing over 3 days or 2 months, writing one piece over a longer period of time, because I took more time to get to put into that piece. Like one of the pieces that I wrote about was The Forgotten. And The Forgotten had a lot of history in it, because The Forgotten is about the history of mixed race babies from 1919, World War One. And when I did the history of it, I cried, because I was like, wow, what is Africa's history then around mixed race kids? Were they not also murdered? Were they not also disregarded? Were they not pushed aside? And there's rumors of it, but there's nothing in stone. And I was like, but I can track what happened in other countries, but I can't really track it here. But I was like, okay, let me just continue writing about it. And I enjoyed writing about that piece. And I started writing more and doing more history. And then when we're looking at the book eventually, when it hit 2021, I was like, okay, God, let's have this conversation now. And to be honest, by no means am I a perfect Christian. There's a lot of things that I do wrong in my life, but I was like, okay, God, we're gonna have a conversation now. I really want to publish. I feel like I'm ready, but I don't have the money. I don't have the means. I have approached other publishing houses in South Africa. No one wants to help me with funding. Maybe I'm not good enough. Almost every piece that I'm put in this manuscript has been rejected for competitions. For more than 50% of the pieces in the book had been rejected. So I'm like, my guy, I don't know what you're gonna do, but you need to do something. And I started mixing up with some friends on social media. I started, because remember, we had to take to social media for sessions and so on and so forth. And 2020, I was here and there. And 2021, I found my tribe. I found my tribe on Instagram, my crazy, noisy publisher, Marissa Prada, and the rest of the crew were at Red Green Books. And it was crazy because it just felt like home. We just felt comfortable. I was just, they were like, okay, that's our sister from Africa. And I was like, yes, thank you very much. you know, and we loved spending time with each other. We loved listening to each other's stories. We loved sharing with each other. We'd call each other even after we'd have open mics on Instagram. And we'd call each other afterwards and be like, oh, that piece was beautiful. And then we'd talk about our experiences, and they'd tell me about their experiences in the US, and I'd talk about my experiences in South Africa. And they'd be like, you're not too different from us. And be like, yeah. And they're like, we were led to believe certain things about South Africa. And you are enlightening us also about certain things about South Africa. I was like, yep. And it just became like a bomb that went off. And that's how I actually met my publicist, is hopping on an open mic on Instagram and performing a piece. And she was like, I'm going to publish you. It was in 2021. And I'm like, okay, this lady is just blowing hot air. She's not
Walk up
serious.
your booty. Yeah.
Yep. And eventually I was like, okay, now she's for real, because she keeps saying it, and she said it publicly. She's like, I will, we'll get somebody, we'll sponsor you. And I'm like, okay, now she's speaking my language, but I'm like, this could be testing, God. Like, what's happening here?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, let's see what happens. And this year she's like, okay, we're ready. we're gonna publish you and 15 others, you and 14 others. And I was like, okay. She's like, okay, send me your manuscript and your title and everything else. And now, before this had happened, I had prepared a title with my little sister, which is like my manager. So her and I, we had put my title together. We had put my manuscript together, which pieces, how many pieces. Before I had met Marissa, before all of that, I had put everything together in hope and in faith that I'm going to publish, not knowing how, but I had positioned myself to get to that point where it's going to happen. I don't know how, but it's going to happen. And even the title, Do I Look African Enough, resonated so much because when I hopped on those open mics, when I went to the Zooms, I remember the ones I went on and the one guy's like, oh, good evening. And I was like, good morning. And he's like, oh, you're from the UK. And I'm like, no. He's like, oh. I was like, I'm from South Africa. And he did that. So I looked at him and I'm like, he's like, Africa, Africa. And I'm like, yes, Africa, Africa. And part of me wanted to be the sarcastic me, being African. We're very sarcastic. I wanted to say the other, like, is there another Africa? Is there one that side that we don't know about? You know, I don't know. And his facial expression said something to me because I was like, what did you expect? And then I had another person inbox me and say, we didn't know there were light-skinned people like you in Africa. And I was like, and there was someone from Nigeria. And I was disappointed. I was really disappointed. And I was like, so do I not look African enough? Like, no, you look like, and then I started playing around with that before I wrote the piece, because there's a piece written, do I look African enough? And I did that on a couple of platforms. I did it on Clubhouse as well. When I went into a space on Clubhouse and my profile picture was there and nobody really knew me. And I asked them, where do you think I'm from? Before I even start, where do you think I'm from? And the one was like, no, the UK. And the other one's like, no, the US. And they were like listening to my voice and they're like, no, you sound like you're from here and you sound like you're from there. But no one came close to Africa. And it happened more than once. And I was like, that was me doing my research. And then I wrote, do I look African enough? And I was like, clearly to some people out there, I don't look African enough. So what does an African person, what is an African person supposed to look like? Because it's clearly not me. And there was also another form of identity, or finding that form of identity as to who I am, and going back to saying, what makes you African, Kim? And writing that in the piece in a sarcastic way, because it made me angry as to why am I getting questioned about my Africanness and what makes me African, you know. And even in that piece, I say, is it my legacy, my family's legacy of poverty that make me African enough? What is it? And I know that that line hit hard because my husband read over it and he's like, this is personal. And I'm like, it's not me, it's KMA.
For sure. For sure. No, and thank you so much for sharing that kind of journey that you've been on. You know, this whole conversation, this whole journey you've been on, to kind of seeing the fruits of your labor now. And do I look African enough? It's clearly such a culmination of some lifelong experiences, and I know a lot of people listening can really dial in and really relate to that. So thank you so much, KMA. So, as we are winding down, there's been such a great session to be able to hear you and hear you out. Please answer this last question for me. Why do you need to get your words out?
I don't need to. I have to. There's a difference. There's a difference. I have to. Whether I like it or not, I have to. Not for you or anybody else to hear or read, but for myself, for my kids, because there'll be one or two of these copies that are going to stay in my care, that are for my kids. It's a guideline for my kids one day to figure out the challenges that mom went through, the challenges they might or might not go through, depending on how the world changes, if it changes, which is why the book has become a necessity. The book is not just filled with stereotypes and being mixed race. It's also just filled on the challenges of being an African woman. It's challenges on abuse that African women have to face. It's challenges on molestation and rape, and how sometimes these things are hidden and tucked deep underneath some places, and they shouldn't be that way. It's some pieces that are highlighted on our country, you know, as Africans and South Africans, and how we are ruled by so much corruption, and how we are ruled by people that take more notice of bank balance notifications than the cries of the people on the street, than the poverty of the people that they continue to impoverish. And that's what the book is about. And I apologize for that. For the dogs, I don't know if you can hear them. Okay. Yeah, so yeah, that's what the book is. It's a need. I know an amazing lady by the name of Diana Ward from the US. She was one of the people that reviewed the book. And even in her review, she says that this book is not just a book that should be read, it's a need. And I'm like, wow, it's a need, because I needed to say some things, and the next generation needs to unlearn some things. So I'm hoping that this book will help some people find their identity and help them unlearn certain things that they were taught, whether it be in abuse, whether it be in a religion, whether it be in your government, and so many different things, just to find healing and release behind it all for you, not for anybody else. This is a selfish book. Poetry is selfish. Every piece in there I wrote, not just based on me, but based on one or two specific people's stories. And it was a selfish thing. It was a releasing of my feelings and my emotions. And if I have just one person say, hey, I enjoyed this, I came away from this learning some things, that's a win. That's a win.
1000%. Well, thank you so much for sharing your amazing story. And we're wishing you all the best as you continue on your tour for Do I Look African Enough? Everyone go check that out. So KMA, as we are wrapping up, please tell us, where can we check out all of your amazing stuff, website links, social media links, all that good stuff. And tell us what's 2022 and beyond looking like for you.
I don't know what 2022 looks like. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm a person that likes controlling too many things. And I'm at a point where I couldn't control anything that came with this book. I just had to put myself and position myself in the right way. So when it comes to 2020 and 2023, I'm just positioning myself and looking at how the year's unfolding, because everything is starting to unfold. Even the way the book got here was a challenge. It took 3 months for me to get my book out of customs in South Africa. So it was sitting here for 3 months. And that was something I couldn't control. So that's the first time I realized I can't control anything. It came to that. But when it comes to the purchasing of the book, I have some copies. When it comes to anyone within Africa that wants copies, when it comes to buying your copies as well online, you can get your copy from the Red or Green Books website, redorgreenbooks.com, and you can purchase a copy on there as well. And then you also see some other amazing stuff that we are doing. The book is up for the Best Indie Award nomination, so which is awesome. Thank you very much. So there's a few other awards as well that it's up for. We'll release the rest at a later stage. There's, as I said, there's nothing much I'm in control of when it comes to this. I'm just watching the year unfold. I'm watching everything unfold on its own. I have no control. If God wants me to just pack up and decide I'm going to be in another country because of this book, so be it, because it was amazing that the book was on display at the New York Poetry Festival this past weekend, which was awesome. It was awesome. It was amazing. I cried. I was like, I can't believe it's happening to me. And I'm like, yeah, this is what happens. My cousin was like, you prayed for it, so why are you surprised? It's like, so there's a lot of amazing things that are happening, and more is still going to come. There's another book that's also going to come as well, but I don't want to give too much away when it comes to that. But it's healing. Every piece that you find in here, it's healing. Every piece that comes from me is healing, and it's straight talk, because as we mentioned, KMA, she doesn't candy coat anything.
Tell us, where can we find your work at? Do you have any links, social media, website?
You can find some of my stuff on all my social media platforms. You can find stuff on my Kimberly_KMA or Turning Pain into Power. You can find some of my stuff on TikTok when I have time for posting stuff on TikTok, because TikTok is addictive. You can find me it's Kimberly_KMA. On Facebook as well, you can find me on Turning Pain into Power with KMA. So that's Turning Pain into Power with KMA. There is another Turning Pain into Power page on there, but that one was hacked. So the Turning Pain into Power with KMA is my new account. It's where you can find all my latest videos, all my latest works that constantly get posted on there. A lot of lives as well get put on there, random lives that we hop on. And as well with Instagram as well. Instagram are also very, very active on there too.
Perfect. All right. Well, KMA, thank you so much for being a guest on the Poet Speaks podcast today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you to your viewers. Thank you to your listeners. Thank you very, very much.
Absolutely. All right. And everyone, check out all of KMA's amazing work. It's going to be down in the description box of however or wherever you're listening to this podcast. Remember, we're the #1 spoken word poetry podcast in the world. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for listening. Again, big shout out and big thank you to KMA all the way in South Africa. All right, everyone, have a good one. Thank you so much for chatting with us today. All right. Take care, everyone.